Hi guys, welcome to another How To Tuesday. Today I'm going to be showing you how to dry brush a model. Got a model here. It's a Primaris Space Marine from the Conquest magazine. You can see I've already base coated it and given it a base wash with a dark blue ink, and what I'm basically going to do is show you how to bring it from this to this. And you can see already the right hand model, this model has a lot more depth and feeling to it. Okay, first things first, you need some blue paint. I'm going to start with McCrag Blue because it's the paint that Games Workshop recommend for Ultramarines. Take a bit with my loading brush and there, I'm being attacked by the paint pot. There you go. And put it onto a separate surface there. Surface. Now, what you want to do is you want to get a brush suitable for dry brushing. I like to use a massive brush like this, just because it lets me get a lot of models done very quickly. A lot of other people will use smaller brushes, more like this. Oh, let's turn that into focus. More like this, or even like this. A lot of it comes down to personal preference. It's really what you want to do. Now, first things first, take a bit of the brush, a bit of the paint, load it on the brush, and then, ironically, you take paint off the brush. A lot of people use the back of their hands. You can use a rag, some tissue, any number of things. But when you get the paint to that point, that's about when you start. Now, what you want to do is a quick back and forward flicking motion like this. Now, you can see straight away you've got a difference there. It's starting to raise the it's starting to lighten the raised areas. I'm just going to go and work around the back here and the legs here. You notice I'm doing this fairly early in the stages of painting the model. The reason for that is obviously because it's very quick, but it's also very messy. If you paint anything, any colours, you're gonna get dry brush over them, and you have to paint them again. It is possible to dry brush things during the later stage. That's when I tend to use a smaller brush. I'll often use masking products like cling film, or sometimes just a bit of tissue paper, or even just a bit of cardboard to stop myself going onto the larger bits. It's probably not a good idea to paint on the back of your hand like this. This is just how I do it. GW paints are non-toxic, so fingers crossed it's not going to kill me. But you know, who knows? If I don't make any more videos after this, you'll know why. Oh, get in there. Ooh, there, sorry, just caught the camera there. It's also worth noting it can be quite an aggressive process. If you've got a more delicate model, you might want to use a lighter, more delicate brush. I picked this brush because it's got a reasonable amount of spring to it. If I was doing something more delicate, I might take this brush, which we can see is much softer. You then have to modify how you dry brush it slightly, being a bit more gentle and a little more careful. For example, on this model, I'll quickly show you, you've got this bit here, which is held on by a tiny hold point. And you can see is just ridiculously fragile. I didn't glue that bit on until after I had finished dry brushing the model, just because it would have knocked it off. That's worth noting out there for people like Skitari players and that. The guys who play the more fiddly and more delicate models. anyone who's got a night gaunt army, dry brushing is a great way of doing skeletons. Just be careful because it's also an easy way to break things. Now, sometimes you'll see me doing this. I'm dragging the brush across in a specific direction. The reason for doing that is because I want to highlight specific edges. Like I'm dragging it down now, and the reason for that is I'm looking to make sure I get some nice highlights around the edge here of the Marine's collar piece. Right, that's reasonably well highlighted. Yeah, that's reasonably well dry brushed in the crag blue. I'm now going to move over to ultramarine blue. This is an army painted colour, which is very similar. Oh, I'm just going to quickly give that a shake. Which is very similar to the old GW ultramarine colour. As you can see, I'm just going to hold those up. It's not massively different to the Macragge blue, but it is a shade lighter. Right, I'm just going to flatten that out a bit. The reason I'm flattening out is you only want paint on the very tips of your dry brush. You don't want it any further in than the very tips. This paint is also a little wetter. Sometimes that happens with army painter paints. I find they don't always mix as well. Now I'm going to do a 3-part dry brushing with this. For basic models, you can usually get away with a 2-part dry brush. A 3-part dry brush is slightly overkill, but I just like the extra depth it gives me. Also, I find it can save me time in the highlighting stage later because the 3rd part will add some of the highlights. You can see there that I put a bit too much dry brush on. While it's still there, yeah, it's called dry brushing, but the paint is in fact wet, and you can just take it off with your thumb or a bit of tissue paper. Don't be afraid to make a mess or to make a mistake. Worst case scenario, you can give a quick base coat to a certain area and come back to it later. Now you see the 2nd layer, I'm not doing anywhere near as much as the 3rd layer, as the 1st layer, and already you can see that because it's a lighter colour, it's already given a significantly larger amount of contrast in there. You can just go directly to that 3rd stage, to that 2nd stage, ignoring the 1st stage. I just like to do it because it gives me a little more paint. Now what I'm going to do is, I don't have quite the colour I want, so I'm going to mix up 2 colours and create a slightly lighter colour. When mixing, I always tend to use 2 parts. Some people blob them in together, but I use 2 parts. That way, if I get the wrong colour, or if I don't put enough in, I can sort of go, I can stop and go, okay, well, that's the colour I want, and just stop mixing and take it from there. As it is, I'm usually fairly good with it, and I usually get about the right amount because I've been doing it for, Christ, what am I now? I'm 40 now. I've been doing it since I was 8. Far too fucking long. I've been doing it far too fucking long. 32 years. I've been playing with toy soldiers for 32 years. I should probably grow up, but I'm not going to. Screw growing up. Growing up's for pussies. Growing up is for the weak. I never understood that term, pussies. You get a slight flick in the bollocks, you go down like a sack of shit. But pussies, as Betty White says, those things can take a... Oh, Jesus. I haven't tried my brush enough. Those things can take a pounding. You can see here I'm just very lightly going over it, often in one direction. Now, I want to do a quick word on flat brushes. Flat brushes can be very useful. They can be very useful for 2 reasons. If you want to get an in-depth colour, you can go across with the edge of the brush like that. If you just want to catch the high edges, you can go across with the flat of the brush like that. And it does actually give you quite a few useful tools. That's why GW have started selling flat brushes, just because they're useful. In areas where I don't want too much highlighting, see, I can go sideways there because I want to get into these areas here, but where I'm on the thing and it might give me a complete too much of a shine, I can go over flat edged. I'm also using this to add a little bit of light effect to it already, which is why you can see that I'm going down. I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm going down like that, because it gives, as you can see, it's giving effects on the top and less on the bottom. Now, these colours will build up, so I'll go down, up and down like that to give a base, and then do that, or I'll do it the other way around. It works both ways. Sometimes I find that starting with the initial lighting and then going over it like that will blend that lighting effect in a little more, but it gives you straight away a lighting effect. And here we can see I've gone from the original model to something much more like that. Not only does it look more in depth, but we can see that there's a light effect as it's lighter on the shoulder pads. It gives it a bit more of a grainy, gritty look on the model, and it really allows you to see a lot of the details, such as the rib cages, the belt buckles, and other bits that you might not otherwise be able to see. Right. I hope that was useful to you guys. Sorry if the model kept going a bit downwards like that. Unfortunately, I'm looking over the top of the camera sometimes, as well as through it, just because, well, just because I am. I'll be going over things like selective dry brushing, how to mask off certain areas. For example, at a later point, I'm going to want to do some dry brushing on this gun, or I might want to do some dry brushing in other areas. And I'll go over great ways of marking off the area. Even there's simple ones, even like just putting your nail there so that it doesn't go on the hand. But I'll be going on a bit more about that later. I'll also be doing one hopefully later about dry brushing scenery and the differences you can get with dry brushing scenery. Okay, thanks very much guys, hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Or you can head over to my Patreon page and support me directly. Remember, it's your support that allows me to do this. Until next time, see you around.